Camilleri, drummer extraordinaire. How are you, my friend?
I'm good.
Thank you for coming into the show.
My pleasure to be here.
This is the Jacked Up podcast with K-Rock.
Love it.
Isn't that something?
That's something.
I've been doing this now for what, 6 months, maybe 7 months?
You're the man. You tell me.
I lost track.
Yeah.
But the premise of the show is having a different musician every week. Very interesting people like yourself, okay? Guys and gals that come on the show that tell about how they got into their instrument, how they got into their craft.
Yeah.
Talk about the music scene, what influenced them. And it's just a way for the viewers at home to get a little bit more insight about you. Because think about it. When you're doing a show, you're not really talking much to the audience, right? You're not really mingling much. You're not really, getting to know people. It's more like you do your show, you take your break, you come back on set, do your second set, whatever, and then you're pretty much packing up and going home. But there's thousands of people out there that would probably maybe get to like to know a guy like you.
They might. I'd like to talk to the audience, but most times the bands won't give me a mic. Usually when that mic is in front of my face, then I get shy because they're like, you should have a mic. You're always talking back there. And then as soon as there's one there, it's like, shut up.
Well, you're a very, very experienced drummer. We're going to talk about what you do locally, what you've done nationally, some of the big names that you've played with. But I'm going to first start off by telling a couple quotes. Some of your bandmates have said things like, your drumming is crushing, killer tones, the utmost professional, dependable, humble, solid as a rock, not only as a drummer and a musician, but as a friend.
Wow.
That's a good one, right?
That's very, very
Here's
nice.
Another one.
Very humbling.
Steve is a clean and precise drumming machine.
Wow.
You ever been called a machine before?
That's a great compliment. Maybe by some of those folks there who appreciate what I do.
Well, let's talk about your current projects. Here in the Sarasota, Bradenton area, what are you currently doing?
One Night Rodeo, going on 13 years this June. 13 years with them. Rock band, Shaky Pudding, Bobby Schneck, who was just on the show. Phenomenal musician, great band. Great guy. And doing the Mike Koch group, not as much lately because everyone's spread out.
Explain who Mike Koch is.
Mike Koch is longtime keyboardist for the Dickie Betts band, Great Southern. Actually, before that, though, I think he was with losing my mind here. It'll come to me, but Dickie's longtime keyboard player, phenomenal musician. Was just doing the Dickie Betts tribute up in Macon, Georgia, with Dwayne and who was a Tedeschi Trucks band.
Yeah, I love those guys.
All those people were up there. It was
an all-star lineup. I didn't get a chance to go because I was busy.
It was.
And I've been to Macon. I've been to the Big House. I went to the cemetery. You get the tour, and it's nice. The Big House has now become a museum, and you pay to go in, and you walk around, and you get to see this is where one guy's bedroom was, and this is where the kitchen was over here, and it's pretty neat. But getting back to Mike, so when I see Mike Koch, he plays and sounds just like Greg Allman, man. It's amazing. You close your eyes, you think you're listening to Greg. Yeah,
when you're playing with him, you feel like you're on the stage with Greg. And my humble opinion about Mike is he's way better.
That's great.
No disrespect to anybody, but
sure.
When you get to play with cats like that, it's just an honor.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the people that you've played with, because you've played with some very interesting people. So let's talk about that. So name some of the guys you've been with.
Well, I've opened a lot of shows for a lot of people. Going back, I worked with a Star Search winner, who was actually the runner-up to Billy Dean on the Ed McMahon thing. So I was with him for 10 years, and we did shows with all kinds of people, from Johnny Lee to Freddie Fender, Tiffany, Diamond Rio. Just an unbelievable amount of people. So I've done that, but actually playing with artists like, Dickie, I haven't. Dickie's like the main artist I've worked with, but being with Dickie, of course, there was Warren Haynes, Phil Lesh, people like
Phil
that.
Lesh. Now, interesting.
Yes.
So when I started playing the bass guitar, my guitarist at the time was a huge Deadhead. So he expected me, a beginner, to play like Phil Lesh. And I'm like, dude, nobody, first of all, plays like Phil Lesh.
Yeah.
Not even the most accomplished guys.
Yeah.
But by listening to Phil, I learned that, hey, there's more than just hitting notes here. There's scales. And, you need to really do your homework because that guy's all over the fretboard, man. You know what I'm saying? Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah. Not a big Dead fan. Sorry, all you Deadheads. But I get what you're saying. It's like
monster player.
We're going to play Led Zeppelin. You need to sound like John Bonham. Well, that's not going to happen. I might be able to play some of the licks, but I'm not going to sound like John Bonham.
Well, let's speak to that. So, like, when you were a kid growing up, man, who were you listening to? Like, what were your favorite records, your favorite bands, favorite drummers?
Well, my dad being a musician and starting very young, I was listening to records. I was listening to Chuck Berry records, Little Richard records. Those were my first influences. The Doobie Brothers, people like that. It wasn't the Beatles. I didn't get into the Beatles until later, but the Allman Brothers for sure. My dad was a big Dickie fan, and he was like, listen to Butch, listen to this drummer. You're going to love this guy. So those are kind of my influences.
So at a young age, you were listening to some of the premier drummers, and your dad was kind of pushing you in that direction, perhaps, maybe?
Yeah, because it's what he was into and what he liked. He's also a steel player, so I was listening to a lot of country. There was a lot of country music in my house. But as far as rock and roll goes, those are the kind of things I was listening to and playing along to those records.
How old were you when you got your first drum kit?
6. Actually, my sister got the drum set, and I took it over. And it was one of those deals. But I was playing on boxes and tables. I had a pair of drumsticks that probably one of my dad's drummers left behind. And I would set up the boxes and the table, and I started beating on those things. And it was like, well, let's get a drum set in the house. And it was from her. And then I took it over, which she wasn't happy about, but she got over it.
It's funny. I have a lot of drummers on this show. And being a bass player, I'm quite fond of drummers.
Yeah.
And they're like my kindred spirits, right? I mean, like bass and drums, right? So I always ask this question, and I know I have my answer, but I wanted to know what your answer is. Drummers, man, you think they're born or they're kind of like made? Like how do you get rhythm? Is it something you're born with or you develop it?
I think there's 2 ways to answer that. Somehow, for me, I started playing automatically. It was just an automatic thing for me. My father was flipped out. But I think when you're in a household full of music and musicians, somehow, hopefully, it gets in you. And maybe it got into me. And then I know guys that have gone to school, studied music, and became phenomenal players through that avenue. That's not the route I took, unfortunately.
But you had rhythm, though. That's what I'm saying. It's like you were able to look at a drum kit. Like, for an example, as a bass player, I keep time as well. It's a percussive instrument.
Yeah.
But when I sit down behind a kit, I'm very limited what my brain will allow me to do as far as both feet and both hands.
Yeah.
But there's some guys it comes quite natural where you're able to do things without thinking about it.
It did. I could hear simple rhythms, and play them, and I can play them consistently. And then, luckily through my father again, his band, he always had great drummers, and I would watch them like a hawk. So I would mimic what they were doing.
Sure.
And I think through the mimicking, you start going, oh, this does this. This is how you do that kind of thing.
Right.
And so that helped, and when they would take a break, I'd get behind the drums and start beating on them. And then drums go, hey, try doing this or holding the sticks this way, or so
because it's interesting because your first goal is to keep the time, right? But at the same time, if something's new, it might be intimidating to you. Perhaps maybe you're not as concerned about the time as you're learning about your beats.
Yeah.
But then eventually it has to come back to you that, hey, I'm a timekeeper, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm able to do stuff.
Yeah. My dad stressed that all the time. If you want to work, you need to keep time. Like, hey, I'm 6 years old. Learn to keep time. That was his biggest thing, But that came through playing along with the records.
Right.
Sure,
we all did.
That is. And I think when you're young too, you're fearless. So I was way more fearless when I was younger than I am now.
What helps a lot of musicians, I think, is when you get into jazz at an early age, it really makes your brain work a lot harder and faster. So then when you go back to the rock, I think you're a better musician. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, I was dumb when I was young because I hated jazz. And people are going, you should learn how to play jazz or take lessons. They wanted me to take lessons. And I thought, oh God, learning how to read music is for jazz guys. No one else. I see, because I'm watching these other drummers and listening to country and rock. I go, they're playing this. What do I need to read that for? Right? Completely wrong. Lessons are where it's at. Learning all styles of music is where it's at. That's just reading will open up your horizons to do more of what you really want to do, no matter what genre of music you're attempting to do. I think I was just because I was able to play so young that I thought I didn't need that.
Sure. I can see that.
It was kind of a taboo, like, oh, I can play. So why do I need to learn how to read it?
As you're evolving as a musician, your maturation process starts where now you realize that, okay, there's a whole lot more for me to learn, man.
Yeah.
I thought I was the man.
Yeah.
Especially when you're a teenager, right? You probably were in demand in a lot of garage bands, local bands, right? Because you were a guy that could play drums well. And there was a lot of kids playing guitars and vocals, at least when I grew up.
Yeah.
And we're both from New York. I'm from downstate. I'm from New Rochelle. You're from upstate New York.
Buffalo, yeah.
So, but still, nonetheless, back then, everybody had a guitar. Everybody had a drum kit. Everybody had a PA. Like everybody played music, whether they were good at it, or they just hung out in the basement with it. So, like, did you play in a lot of bands growing up?
I did. My first taste of the stage, I was 8 years old. My father's band, in the Steel Belt, played this little gin mill place. I would go with my mom, sit there, watch the band play, and they got me up to play. So naturally, I got up. I think I played Wipe Out, probably some other song, and then people start handing you money, and you're like, "Ooh, I want to do this,"
right?
Yeah. So that builds your ego.
Sure, it does.
And then I'm 11 years old. My dad's drummer can't make the gig, so he's like, "Back up your stuff. You're playing tonight."
Isn't that wild?
That's wild.
So at 11 years old, you were playing with a bunch of older guys in a real pro band.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and getting through the gig, no problem, and that gets up here too. That makes you think you don't need these other things.
Right. You get kind of cocky, maybe a little conceited.
You do. Arrogant. I think so.
But at the end of teenagers, that's how you get.
Yeah. But
then you start meeting players like that are really good. Then you're like, fuck, I got to keep up with these guys now, right?
Yeah. You get humbled.
See, here's the thing, dude. I tell people this all the time. I'm a marketing guy that happens to play the bass. But every time I pick up the instrument, I realize there's so much more to learn.
Yeah.
There's so much more to learn. Just when I think I mastered my set list.
Yeah.
I can play every note on every song. Then I realize, wait a minute. I'm listening to it back home with the headphones. That guy's doing something completely different. Like on Footloose.
Yeah.
It's not boom, 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 boom. He's all over the freaking board, that guy.
Yeah.
So it's like it's humbling because you realize I'm never going to master this thing, man.
Yeah. It's your training. And yeah. You got it when you're learning songs and you're somebody who's just doing it by ear, you got to really be able to listen and hone in on specific things because you can be influenced by the bump, and you think, oh, that's what the bass is doing, when it's not. It's this doing that. Something else is comping that rhythm. So you got to learn to separate those things. And I think I've gotten pretty good over the years of deciphering my parts to be able to play them.
That's a great question because, like, let's say, for an example, Jacked Up's called you and you filled in for us and did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
And but there was probably songs that you had to quickly learn.
Yeah.
So what's your process at home? Like when you fill in for a band and there's like a whole bunch of new songs that you've never done, how do you tackle that?
Well, I've learned to write charts. I lived in Nashville for a bunch of years. When I left Buffalo, moved to Nashville, everyone handing out a chart book at the gigs. You're doing a pickup gig. So what's this? It's a number system. And then within that number system, there might be a line of music, a small line, pretty simple to read. So I got this book on the number system. I wish somehow I lost it. I wish I still had it, but I learned to write arrangements. And then anywhere there is a place where there's a fill, a rest, or what have you, then I would just write that in. So when you call me for a gig, I'm going, I know that song, but I've never played it before. Okay, so I'm writing out this arrangement. Either I'm picking up the guitar and I'm writing out the chord arrangement, or I'm just using these little bar lines, whatever it just tells me. And then I put the notation in there where, there might be a break here. There's a fill. I got to bring the band back in. And that's how I do it. Basically like that, And then people, oh, you played this perfect. You never played it before. But it's a cheat sheet.
You have a system. Also, you might have a great memory in that you might have heard it in the radio a couple times and it's just in the back of your brain.
Oh, yeah.
And then it just comes to you because rock and roll is also rock and roll.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain timings in rock and roll.
Yeah.
I'm one of those guys where we try to do things just like the record. But what I have to do sometimes, you have to listen to the live version versus the studio version because a lot of times there's a big difference. You want to basically do it the way they do it live because that's the real deal. A lot of these records that we grew up to listening to in the 70s and 80s were so overly produced. Because you're like, is that a bass or is that like some kind of keyboard? Like, what is that? Like Billie Jean. I don't even think that was really a bass, man. I think that was some kind of...
Might be an overdub too. Might be layered.
Multiple layers, I found out later. Multiple layers, man. Yeah. Because they have the ability to produce these records. So I always look for the live version.
Yeah. I think I called you and said, hey, are you doing this ending or whatever it was? And I think, yeah, just go with that ending. It'll work.
So now you play rock and roll and you play country, the two basic things, right? Because with Shaky Pudding, you guys are covering a lot of classic rock.
Yeah.
And I just recently saw you guys with Michael Hund. He came down from Buffalo for the annual Everything Buffalo party. Yeah. So for people listening that don't know about this, so here in Sarasota, Florida, once a year, there's a massive party and it gets bigger and bigger each year. Now they're doing it at Benderson Park, which is a great place.
Yeah.
As long as the weather's great, that's a great place to do it. So I went recently, and you played with Michael Hund and my buddy Bobby Schneck, and you guys call yourself Shaky Pudding. It's a trio, and you're doing like 2 Tickets to Paradise and like all these just great FM 70s classic rock songs. And then I've seen you with One Night Rodeo because I used to follow One Night Rodeo when I lived in Fort Myers. The manager back then was a guy named Ed, I want to say.
Yeah.
And there was another guy in the band that sang, I believe, Corey. So it was it was still a great band. I mean, even today, One Night Rodeo was fantastic. But back then, you guys were doing a lot of charity events in the Fort Myers area, and I was involved in American Cancer Society, and I was doing those guitars. I was doing themed branded guitars. That was me.
Oh, okay, cool.
Remember that really sensitive song you guys did about cancer?
After Beautiful. It was
After Beautiful. We did like a special guitar for that and stuff like that. But anyway, to make a long story short, country music is a little bit different than rock and roll, right? It's a little
in a sense, yeah. If you want to compare.
Which do you prefer?
Old country or new country?
That's good. I would say old country.
I prefer old country. I like some of the new stuff, but not as much because the instrumentation has just changed so much. It's gotten too distorted, I guess.
You think that rock crept into it too much and it became more, or is it the other way? Is pop got into it too much?
Yeah, and I blame record producers and record industry people for that, because I think it's more about the quick buck instead of the integrity of the music.
Look, there's an exception to the rule. I think Taylor Swift is a completely different thing because, yes, she started out as a pure country person, but then she got more and more pop as the money came in and the writers are like, look, you can be number one. So now she became country pop and then just pop.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure she still does country songs at her show, but I bet you most of her stuff is, and I've never seen her. I'm assuming it's more pop now.
Yeah.
Shania Twain, I think, started that whole thing because she became very, very successful commercially.
Yeah.
MTV, because she was a beautiful woman singing great songs. MTV made her famous.
Yeah.
And some of her stuff, her husband,
Mutt Lange,
produced a lot of those records, and he had a rock and roll background with Def Leppard and those guys, AC/DC. So they took her and made her a bona fide superstar. Garth Brooks, in my opinion, I think he pretty much stayed true to country, even though he got more popular and he got on the radio. I think he was more country than the other people are, don't you think?
I think so, yeah. I mean, he was rocking. You could rock country and put on a great show without being a rock band. You know what I mean? I mean, essentially, yeah, in a way you are, but you're still country because all those elements are still there. Steel guitars are still there. The fiddles are in there. All those nuances of country music are what I love about country music. It's hard to find it today. It's there. I think it's more in the underground side of country music because I think it can still be found. But if it's on mostly if it's on the radio, you're not going to hear it. And I have a love for steel guitar because my father's a steel guitar player, and I grew up on that. And you don't hear it in today's country music because I don't think it's not appealing, or the way they're selling it to people. You know, I guess they're just looking for a bigger audience.
Are there any new country bands today that are going throwbacks? Like, for an example, I remember in the 90s when the Black Rose came out, because music was really different in the 90s. And then all of a sudden the Black Rose, and it was refreshing because they were taking rock and blues, you know, and they were covering stuff like they did the Stones and Otis Redding, and they made it to their own. And I think that it was nice to hear those records, those first two albums especially. Are there any bands today that you're like are coming out in the country world? They're like, oh, okay, they're getting more back true to their roots.
I couldn't tell you. I don't. I can't stay on the station long enough to even figure out who it is that's playing, because when I put on a country station, I think I'm on a pop station.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's like, oh, is this the rap station?
Are you talking about more like terrestrial radio, or are you talking about satellite? Because with satellite, there actually is an outlaw country.
Right.
There's like an old, like there's different versions of country on the satellite system.
Regular radio.
Yeah. Like 92.1 here.
Yeah. You know, and one of those stations will, like during the afternoon, they'll play a lot of older stuff. But it seems like as the day goes on, they started getting into different things that, I'm like, what's that? Oh, I am on the country station. I thought it was the pop station. So I don't know who anybody is today. I don't have a taste for it. Doesn't appeal to me like it used to, which is sad because I really love country music.
But you're still honoring your favorites, the legends. You know, you're playing true to that style.
Yeah.
You know, Dwayne was on the show. Dwayne's a great guy, great musician. In fact, I always kid around with Dwayne because he was the first one I ever saw play a 6-string bass.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, okay, 4-string is a handful, but then 5, okay, I know, but 6, I was like, wow. And then now he plays guitar, 6-string guitar. So he's a hell of a musician.
Yeah.
And he sings beautifully. You guys have a really solid band, One Night Rodeo, man. I really enjoy seeing you guys.
Yeah, I love playing in that band. It's fun. It's one. I love playing on a click because we do have some backing tracks. All the instruments live, but you know, like the little banjos and some of the filler stuff is tracked. But I love the challenge. I love knowing that I can be consistent every single night. The music we play is great. The originals we play.
Is your attitude different with One Night Rodeo when you're on the kit versus Shaky Pudding? It's like a Shaky Pudding more laid back and more like, okay, let's have fun and let's maybe do things off the cuff, whereas One Night Rodeo is more of like a program. It's like more like a machine.
One Night Rodeo Dwayne will change it up. I like that when he does change it up, but usually we are sticking to something because we want the show to flow. We want it just to keep moving. If he stops it for a certain reason, then he might switch up a song. But other than that, we do that just to maintain a flow, try not to lose a dance floor. Shaky Pudding, we can go in any direction we want. We could be as loose as we want. So the difference there is, we could be a lot more looser. We could stretch. When you're on the grid, you can't.
Right.
There's no stretching on the grid. That's the arrangement. That's how you play it.
Who controls the click track?
In the past, I used to, but now Dwayne does. Everything is with a button, a push of a button.
Without knowing much about it, because we don't use it at all. But wouldn't it make sense for the drummer to control that?
It did at one point because they were doing, I guess, enough up front with just handling the people. All I had to do is hit a button.
But you're still counting everybody in still.
Yeah.
And then you hit the button, or you hit the button, then you're counting in.
What happens with how we have it set up is when he starts it, you'll hear whatever song it's going to be. That's country or whatever. 4 count. And then I'll
So
get
what
the
you're
4
hearing
count.
this in your ears?
I'm hearing this in my ear.
Okay, because we're going to talk to the viewers and let the viewers know the difference between inner ears for a musician and using wedge monitors.
Yeah.
In this case, you have to use inner ears in order to do this particular job.
It just won't work. So yeah, I'll hear the song come up. It'll say 4 count. Then I count it in.
Is it like a nice lady's voice, like 4 count?
No, unfortunately, it's Wayne's voice.
Maybe some like AI sexy lady's voice.
Yeah.
You know?
No. And also, there's within the track, Dwayne will put little cues in there, blah, blah, blah. So you can't, there's no room for error with it.
Right.
Which I love that.
Yeah.
That helps with the consistency.
That makes you stand up a little straighter and be a little bit more attentive.
Yeah. And we're not the only ones that do it. I mean, national acts are doing it this way too, probably even a little bit more sophisticated than what we're doing. And they have the same built-in cues. This way they don't miss anything. Okay, this is the ending. We're going out, just so you're not going to overshoot it.
Now, what are your thoughts on bands? And I'll say that some of these bands, like Motley Crue, a great example. They'll have complete background vocals that are recorded.
Yeah.
Sometimes they may even lip sync. There's been rumors that the bass player is not even really playing. It's a track he's playing to.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that kind of stuff? Like when you purchase a ticket, and it's usually the older bands,
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on all of that? Like, is it like you get what you get, or is it like as a musician it drives you crazy?
I think that drives me crazy. I want to see the person playing. I'm there for the live show. I don't want to see somebody Milli Vanilli in it vocally or even playing it. I think that's, especially in country music years ago. This is the other thing I loved about country. There was such a camaraderie with the players. You couldn't wait to hear somebody solo or pick. That's kind of all gone, and I'm getting away from what you're saying, but I want to hear it live. I don't care if there's a backing track or if there's a backing vocal maybe, but I want to hear somebody actually sing the song. I want to hear somebody actually play the song. And that brings me to this. I played casinos for years, and there was this one band that would come in and play. Really nice people. And they used tracks, and the drummer played along with the actual drum track.
That must have driven them crazy.
And
because that's got to be nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Or difficult.
It drove me crazy just having to hear it.
Because if it wasn't perfect, then it was sloppy.
He played it. I have to say he played it really spot on. And I asked him, I said, "You're playing these tracks so good. Why don't you lose the drum track?"
What was his answer?
And his response was that, well, the band leader doesn't want me to because he thinks it sounds fatter, that it's more full with the track there. I disagree.
Yeah, he's not really that's not really a compliment to your drummer then by saying that.
It's not. Why have a drummer?
Right.
I mean, he was capable of playing the part. Perfect. Yeah, but
well, a lot of bands when they first experiment with it, before we had a keyboard player, if we wanted to do "Don't Stop Believing," that piano, that's part of the song, so you would probably have to bring that in as a track.
Yeah.
So that's how bands I think start off using it, right? At least of the rock bands that I know. But the cool thing is now that we have a keyboard player, right? He's got the Nord, and something else he uses. Is a plethora of sounds. Our drummer is Jared Johnson. I don't know if you know Jared.
I met him a few weeks ago out at Blase, and he was a really nice guy. I gave him a nice compliment. I don't think he understood the compliment, but it was definitely a compliment.
You know what I noticed about some of you guys, man? Like the upper echelon, like guys like you. Your hands, man. Like what separates the men from the boys, I think, in drumming is the hands. It's not this. It's it's like, right? Am I right?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. I mean, I play from here. I mean, I don't play from here. I'm not swinging from the rafters. If people go, "You don't play hard," I'm like, yeah, but my power's coming from here. I don't have to. I don't have to.
Because John Bonham was a different drummer than, say, Charlie Watts.
Yeah, he played from here. Right? I mean,
they were both effective drummers. Yeah. Charlie Watts kept it, I think, right in front of him, more or less. Kept it basic.
Yeah.
Whereas John Bonham was powerful. And then you get the guys like Neil Peart, who, pretty much used everything around him. I mean, his kits were. Did you ever see those Rush concerts, man? Those kits were monstrous, dude.
Monstrous, but still, they weren't swinging from the rafters because they knew their body, their power came from here.
Right.
So everything is just an arm's length away.
So what's your basic kit? Like how do you like to set up your kit? What do you use?
I like to set up a traditional 4-piece kit or a 5-piece kit. That's what I'm most comfortable on.
So what would be the determining factor for taking that fifth piece out with you?
Mood. I feel like this today, just like, what shoes you're going to wear.
Now, do you mic up? All your drums are mic'd up?
Most of the time.
And you're more or less going through the front of the house?
Yeah, with One Night Rodeo, every show's mic'd up. With Shaky, depending on where we're playing, I'll mic everything or I'll just do a kick and an overhead.
So you had mentioned that you always use inner ears no matter what, which is great.
Always with One Night Rodeo, sometimes with Shaky Pudding. Sometimes I just use a wedge. Did you have them at
the Buffalo thing? Were you using inners?
No.
Because that was truly a rock show in the sense that I think you guys were just calling out the songs, man.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think you guys had a set list.
No.
And a bunch of people started coming on stage.
Mike, whatever Mike does, you just go.
Did you do the same thing when you played Saturday night at the Big Top?
Yeah. Yeah, he just, whatever comes out, that's where we go.
Yeah. I'm going to have him on the show. We're going to have to do calling like a radio station kind of thing because he's left the market already.
Yeah.
But he does come in once a year, right? I also want to get another person you mentioned, Mike Kosh. I want to see if I can get him on the show.
Yeah, fabulous.
Yeah. What's great about this particular part of Florida is that there's a lot of musicians here. There's different types of musicians. There's guys that are just like retired and they're rich and famous. There's guys that are still working, that have the Dickie Betts and Greg Allman and Charlie Daniels connections, There's a big Southern rock. I mean, look, let's face it, man. Allmans and Betts they're entrenched here. Do you know that Jared, my drummer, his wife, Kaylee, is a Betts? Like she's part of that Betts family. Like
I did not know
that's a big family tree, man.
Yeah, it is. Before I started with Dickie, before I actually was with One Night Rodeo, I was in a band with Dickie's daughter, Kim Betts. She was getting into music and she put this band together. It was her first band. And I joined it. I thought this could be interesting,
Sure.
Put this band together from scratch. And that's how, and Dickie, we'd play these gigs and then Dickie would show up. We're like, oh my God, now he's going to sit in. Cool.
That's cool.
So I'm like, okay, now how am I going to get in that band?
Were you involved in that? Were you at that Dickie Betts show at the White Buffalo, one of the last shows he did? Because Damon Fowler was there. Mike Kosh was there. Dickie and Dwayne, his son, right?
Yeah.
Were you drumming that show?
I was.
Okay. I was there.
That was the rehearsal pre-tour show.
But he wasn't, he was not all good. I mean, he was not good, unfortunately.
No, unfortunately, I mean, he's had some health issues.
Right.
I think that was right before, I think the stroke was just before that. Yes, he was coming back from a stroke.
Yeah.
And trying to get his skills back together.
But after that show, you guys went on the road, right?
We went on
How many shows did you guys do?
We did 6 shows. And I'll tell you, by the 5th show, definitely the last show was Peach Fest. He was really coming back into it.
Good.
He was doing well. The band was getting
muscle memory, right?
I think so. And the band was getting adjusted and starting to gel at that point. And it took those shows. And I wished it had went on a little longer because I can see we were starting to see the potential.
You were having fun too, right?
Yeah, we were starting to have fun because it was a little tight in the beginning, And when you play with Dickie, he's the man. Everyone said, you watch Dickie because he can take you on a ride too. So if it's going to go here, you got to go. And sometimes that happened, but and also the more you play, the looser you can be. So you're still figuring things out. But it was great. Probably
Because,
one of the best experiences.
I remember about a year ago, I saw an Allman Brothers celebration at the Van Wezel. And at the very end, Dickie came, they brought Dickie out at the very end. And it was somebody's birthday. And, the families were there and the families came on stage, towards the end of the night. And one of the great things about that show is me and Larry, my guitar player, Larry Kirby, we were in the very last row at the Van Wezel.
Yeah,
which is still a good seat. I mean, it's a small theater. But somebody came up to us and says, "Hey, I have." They didn't know who we were. The guy goes, "We have 2 extra tickets, down center stage with us. Do you want them?" And we're like, "Yeah." So he basically upgraded us for free. Cool. And we became friends with the guy. We bought him drinks, but then we came all the way down, so we were like right in the best seat. And it was a great show because Tyle Backman, what's her name? The bass player, the female Tyle.
Oh, Tyle Wickenfield. Tyle
Wilkin something.
Field, something like that.
Right. Great bass player. Yeah. Great tone. Little chick, frizzy hair, this big bass, but she was able to rock it. A lot of celebrity and guest appearances were there.
That's cool. You got to see that show.
Yeah.
She's incredible. Did she sing one of the songs?
She did sing one song. I don't know which one.
I can't remember which one it was. Not Whipping Post. I don't think it was Whipping Post.
But the thing is, man, some of those bass lines, I thought early Allman Brothers stuff, man, those bass lines were fantastic. And she was nailing them, dude. Yeah. Whipping Post and all that stuff, man. Don't Want You No More. Down, 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 down. I love the Allman Brothers, dude. I grew up on Leonard Skinner and the Allman Brothers. And I'm up in New York. And as kids, we used to drink beer and we would buy Confederate flags because we thought they were cool. So we would have these Confederate flags in our bedrooms. Me too. Meanwhile, we couldn't be more Yankee, right?
Right. That's the funny part.
Yeah. So we'd drink Southern Comfort, and we would smoke weed and we would build campfires and we would sing songs and we would play music. And this is all before, you can go to a bar legally, you know what I'm saying? And then I just had a love affair with the Allmans, Tucker, right? Charlie Daniels.
Yeah.
Then I got into some of the harder stuff like Blackfoot, Molly Hatchet.
That's the band.
Ricky Medlock, Blackfoot.
Yeah, no, Mike was in, I want to say it was Blackfoot.
It could be, man. Molly Hatchet, which is a completely different band now, Molly
Hatchet was one of those bands.
38 Special, man. 38 Special has so many radio hits. It's incredible, man.
Hold On Loosely.
Yeah, that band really took off.
Yeah.
But what I liked about, there was a little bit of country influence in the Southern rock guys, and then you had the Outlaws. I mean, to me,
I loved the Outlaws.
The greatest Southern rock song, and debate me on this, is Green Grass and High Tides Forever.
That's my favorite Outlaw song. I love that song.
That's an anthem.
It is an anthem. That's the stuff I listen to. That was my first taste of Southern rock, Allman Brothers, Outlaws, Charlie Daniels. I mean, is Charlie Daniels country? Or is he Southern rock?
But there was some elements of country in there.
Yeah.
The piano, certainly the violin, the fiddles.
Yeah.
There'd be some steel guitar on occasion or some perhaps other stringed instruments. So, I thought that his stuff was mellow. I mean, not everything was Devil Went Down to Georgia, or Willie Swamp. There were some softer ballads, Long-Haired Country Boy.
Yeah.
Right? But Marshall Tucker, man, when those guys, the two brothers, the Caldwells, Take the Highway, Heard It in a Love Song.
Yeah.
Right? Great stuff. I went to a concert one time in Philadelphia. It was called The Roundup. And I think it was 1979, 1980 or something. And it was like a bunch of bands like Allman Brothers, 38 Special, like Molly Hatchet, like Tucker, Daniels, like an all-star lineup. And it was like 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. So there was 12 hours of like 4 or 5 bands.
Mm-hmm.
And it was sold out JFK Stadium, which they tore that down since, but it was right by the Spectrum, And it was funny because we were all New Yorkers. And we go down there and it was like a Southern rock festival. People are waving Confederate flags.
Uh-huh.
And they were in the city of Philadelphia. And it was just great. It was a great day.
That's awesome. I got to open for the Outlaws in 1990. My bass player got a gig with the Outlaws playing bass for about 3 years. And they come to town, we'd open up. And that was when Huey was in the band.
What's the name of your project back then? What was it called?
I had a rock band called About Time. and we were doing Yes and Zeppelin and all kinds of
Cool.
stuff. And a friend of ours who was in a band out of Boston knew Nino, who was the bass player in my band, guitar player at the time, said, I heard the Outlaws are looking for a bass player. You want to go audition? She said, yes.
Were they still based in like Tampa back then? Or?
Yes. Yes.
Because Huey Thomason, you mentioned.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the original guys died. Henry Paul is back now.
Yeah.
Was he an original member?
I believe those are the two original members of the band. And I think, when they split, they just did different versions of the Outlaws. And then, of course,
so I know they brought in Freddie Salem on guitar, and they had a lot of different bass players in that project. But the voices were Huey and Henry, right?
Yeah, yeah, that was, man.
Well, they called themselves the Florida Guitar Army, and I've never ever saw the power and the energy of 3 electric guitars and a bass guitar. I think did they have 2 drummers when they went live? Sometimes I don't know, but they were just dynamite.
I think way back in the day they did. I think they did. And one of the loudest bands you'll ever hear. They were powerful. Loud. My friend who was on the tour with them, he goes, I blew up so many bass cabinets playing with that band because we were so loud. I said, that's awesome.
I mean, back then they didn't just do outdoors. I mean, I remember we would go to like arenas, like you'd go to Madison Square Garden, or you go to the Philadelphia Spectrum or the Brendan Byrne Arena in New Jersey. So you're indoors, and these guys were loud in there, and it wasn't like you're outside of the stadium. So I know what you're talking about. It was like deafening, man.
Yeah, everything on 10.
Another band that I really liked growing up, and this is different from Southern rock, is I was a huge Van Halen guy.
Yeah,
and the very first time I went to high school, there were kids in high school that would carry around record albums like they were books. Like they would it was weird. They would just bring them to school and have their records out. So this one guy let me borrow Van Halen 1. So my parents had a furnished basement in our house in New Rochelle, New York. And I went down and I put Van Halen 1 on the turntable, put the needle down, turned off the lights, and I laid on the floor and I positioned the speakers and I laid there like this, as a kid. And I heard Running with the Devil going into you really got Eruption. Remember that stuff, man?
Oh, totally.
Powerful stuff.
I was so into that stuff too, especially in the early 80s like that. That's when I was starting having garage bands and playing with my buddies from high school. We started playing all that stuff. And Van Halen was my first rock concert I went to.
But I think that Van Halen was so different back then because you had David Lee Roth, who like every guy wanted to be, because he was cool and he had all the chicks, right? And Eddie Van Halen was just a complete animal. I mean, no one knew what the hell he was doing. The sound was so unique. And then Michael Anthony is one of the most underrated rock and roll bass players and singers, right? Yeah. All that high stuff was him.
Yep.
And then Alex, love him or hate him, Alex Van Halen was a very unique sounding drummer. Like,
love him.
If you put his shit on, you could say that's Alex Van Halen. Am I right?
Undeniable. Certain sound. He's got a certain snare drum sound. That's that guy. That's what I love about analog recording versus digital, because back then you can hear somebody and go, that's who that is, just by listening to their sound.
Right.
Today in the studios, well, I'm not digging your snare drum sound. I'm going to take a sample from here and I'm going to paste it over your drum to make it sound this way. It's like you're losing your identity a little bit.
So I'm going to throw out some names of some drummers and you just give me a little blurb of what you think.
Okay.
We're going to start with Keith Moon.
Oh, monster, maniac. Nobody like him. There'll never be another Keith Moon.
Do you think, I've heard professional drummers say to me that he was sloppy. Could you say that?
No, I don't think.
But if he was sloppy, he fell into the right. Like he might fall into the right beat.
When he was drunk,
because he was only John Entwistle could keep up with him. He was a complete freak, but he didn't play to. He played to the vocal, right? He didn't play to the guitar.
No, you're right about that. Because I've seen these interviews where they talk about his playing style. Pete Townsend even said this, that he played along with the vocal in the verses, which was crazy. And then when the solos would come around, that's when he would straighten out. It's like, that's crazy. Who does that? But how do you play so much and not be in the way? I mean, he was magic for that band.
You know what? I assume you don't drink when you go on stage, right?
Not anymore.
How do these guys drink? How did he drink like that and drug like that and still be able to play? I mean, like, How was that? That's to me, it's like that's the number one position in the band where you have to be sober, in my mind.
I can't. Last time I got really drunk at a gig, I fell off the drums. And a buddy of mine had to finish the gig. I can't do it.
Yeah,
I can't. Not even.
because you
I could have
be,
maybe 2 drinks,
yeah,
maybe, but
you
you
can get
know,
loose,
a little loose.
right?
But anything more than that,
I mean, a lead singer can do whatever he wants. Like Jim Morrison can do whatever the hell he wants, you know, and create a new song on
Yeah.
stage, right? But a drummer has to be on point. Okay, another next drummer, Charlie Watts.
Charlie Watts, solid drummer. I don't know what to say about Charlie
Would you say
Watts.
he's a basic, straightforward?
Yeah, but
Did he have elements of jazz in him?
well, he was a jazz drummer. Initially, he was a jazz drummer. Turned rock and roll. Hard drummer to copy. He's as simple as sounding as he is. He's not. There's just like Ringo, man.
I was going to say Ringo.
There's such a nuance of how these guys play. You listen in at first glance and you're going, "Oh, that's easy." You dive into it to play and to feel the way they made music feel.
Right. So do you think
Top-notch.
Ringo was also a guy like Charlie Watts who, because of their age, maybe they grew up listening to jazz and they were listening to things before rock and roll that made them better rock drummers?
I can't say that about Ringo because I don't know, but only from hearing interviews with Charlie Watts do I know he was a jazz drummer. So that's where his influence was. I'm not sure where Ringo's came from, but other than maybe Chuck Berry records or rock and roll records of
What about John Bonham? I mean, do you think he took it to the next level? Do you think that, like, I think that John Entwistle took the bass to the next level because that it wasn't just keeping time, and he was now being a lead
yeah.
instrument. I think that John Bonham was the first stadium style. I'm going to make you feel my drums. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. God of Thunder. God of Thunder, man. Just big beats, big drum sound. Influenced everybody in rock and roll today, I think. You know, no matter what you're doing, if John Bonham wasn't part of your growing up, or what you know, if you wanted to grab something from a drummer, he's one of the guys you wanted to grab stuff from.
In that spirit, I'm going to throw out a name that you're going to be surprised because I grew up to this particular band, and to this day, my bass style is predicated on the records I listened to from this band. Ginger Baker of Cream.
I was never a Ginger Baker fan. Why? I don't know. Didn't get into a lot of Cream records. I just saw this maniac behind the drums. He looked like an octopus back there, the way he played. He played really on top of the drums. I guess now I can appreciate him more than I did when I was younger. I didn't get it. But, you know, if I'm listening and not watching, because sometimes I listen with my eyes and I see things, I go,
but is it safe to say that Cream was the first power trio in the sense that they were then?
Yeah.
I mean, before Grand Funk, before the Zeppelin, there were 3 guys that could fill up a stadium and fill up the sound. Cream, to me, was the godfathers or the bricklayer of the whole heavy scene even before Sabbath.
Talk about jazz drummer. I mean, Ginger Baker was a jazz drummer. All these guys, Mitch Mitchell. These guys also.
Nobody mentions Mitch Mitchell. That's funny. Nobody talks about that guy.
No, he was a powerhouse.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a powerhouse drummer. I mean,
and he had to deal with a lot of bullshit.
Probably, I would imagine. And he played a lot, but he was able to play and still be out of the way. It was so musical. But yeah, he's a powerhouse drummer. All those guys are from jazz backgrounds. How they did. Yeah, I guess somehow that
Buddy Rich, obviously, probably the greatest drummer. I think that maybe there'll be a picture of him next to the word drummer in a dictionary. One time Neil Peart put on a suit and he played in a band and he played that kind of music. Yeah,
they did the Buddy Rich Memorial Concert.
Yeah.
Right? Is that what you're talking about?
Wasn't that amazing?
Yeah. Yep.
He nailed it.
Neil Peart, one of the greatest drummers of all time, of course. He continued to take lessons. and he started taking jazz lessons. I think specifically so he could do the Buddy Rich Memorial. I can't remember the teacher that he got with that was teaching him all these things, how to play traditional grip. And
timings are obviously very different.
And I've noticed that when he started doing that, it kind of changed his playing a little bit. It's almost like don't fix something that's broken, because obviously he wasn't, but he evolved as a drummer, even while he was still with Rush, of course, and his playing started to change a little bit. I don't know if other people have noticed that like I have, but I sense there was something different about his playing. Always great, of course, but it was different.
So getting back to you, man, all these people that we just mentioned you were listening to, man.
Yeah.
So now you have your own style.
Yeah.
Like, how would you describe yourself, like, as far as the way you play, man, the way you sound?
A melting pot. And that goes back to those great drummers in Buffalo that I grew up watching and learning from. And so a good friend of mine, Mike Caputi, who played on Rick James' Mary Jane record, was a big influence in my playing. You steal things. You take things that you like. You're not going to be that guy. But if you can grab something and then you bring it to yourself,
sure.
And I would take stuff from this guy, Greg, and then every record that you practice.
Well, how about Motown? A lot of us musicians
are
doing things that came out of the Motown world.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in Motown bands too, man. I got to play with so many great people and play so many different kinds of music that I am so grateful for, because playing all that stuff makes you who you are as a
Would you
player.
say that you're still evolving as a drummer and as a musician?
Absolutely.
And are you still like getting better? Like, are you putting the time in and you're practicing learning new stuff?
I still practice. I try to get better. I want to be better.
Do you challenge yourself though? Like, is Shaky Pudding challenging to you? Is One Night Radio? Are you guys trying to maybe, like, the great example would be sometimes Jacked Up will bring a song into the studio room.
Yeah.
And it makes us all better musicians because holy fuck.
Yeah.
I got to play this now and I never played this before.
Yeah. I do like those challenges. There's been times where songs will come up and I go, I can't even touch that song. Next. There's no way I can do that.
Sure.
That's out of my skill level.
Right.
I can probably get through the song, but it ain't going to be it's not going to be satisfying to me, or maybe the person in the audience who's waiting to hear a specific part of the song that I can't play. So I'll stay away from things I can't do good. I only like, but I don't mind a challenge, and I do practice.
Do you sometimes throw in besides just a really cool fill, do you find time to put the drum solos in anywhere? Do you actually have a solo incorporated in your act?
No.
Is that something that you care for or don't care for?
I don't care for, because, okay. You know how it is. If you're at home playing your bass, you're a different bass player at home than you are on the stage. Probably feel like you can do anything. I'm home practicing. I can play all this stuff that I think sounds cool. But as soon as I get on the gig, I'm like, where'd it go? I can't do it. And I think that's where a lack of training might come in for me. Some guys have just the ability to do it. Their ideas are flowing. I start running out of ideas. So I don't like to solo. I like to just play within the song. I like to be a part of the song. And then depending on the song, I find my ways to get my digs in where I can be showy. But I'm getting a little better at it.
People
lately.
like showy drummers. And I mean, like, especially if you're covering Allman Brothers, there's always that place for that little showcase. Yeah. But my drummer Jared is he takes these educated risks. They're not gambles, they're educated risks where he tries different fills when we're live.
Yeah.
Sometimes they work beautifully, sometimes they don't. But I could see his brain going, and he's trying to fit things in that he normally didn't try the last time.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I do that. Just make sure you land on the one coming out.
That's the cake.
Don't do something that's gonna make your bandmates go, "Why did you do that?"
Right. No, he always lands on the one. But because I'm next to him and I'm really watching him more than the other guys are, I'm the one seeing it.
Yeah.
And like, sometimes we smile at each other, laugh at each other because like either I do something bizarre, whether it's good or bad, or he'll do something bizarre.
Yeah. And
then we notice it. Whereas the guys up front don't really, are not into that whole little.
As long as it's in context and it's in the flavor of the song, that's cool. But if you're just randomly playing something because it'll fit, that's not cool. And I've seen guys do that where they'll just start playing fills. So I was like, that doesn't really make sense to the song. That you're serving yourself at that point. You're not serving your band or doing it the song justice. Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing that we do is everybody practices at home. We come into the studio and we have a game plan. These are the songs we have to tighten up. Here are the new songs. We go in the studio every Monday night. We go to Bass Sound. You've been to Bass Sound before, right? Bass Sound Studios?
No, I have
On
not.
17th. Anyway, so what we do is we try our best to serve the song the way it's played. But then over the years, Jacked Up now, we're starting to slowly have a little bit of our own kind of sound and our own kind of way of doing things.
That's cool.
It's slowly creeping in.
Because you're evolving as a band at that point.
Yeah.
Like the song is evolving.
Right.
That's fine.
Larry will start a song a certain way, or his guitar tone is different on that one and the way we end. And now with this new singer, Sarah Santiago, who you got to come hear us. I know you're never available on a Saturday, but when you get a night off, come hear Sarah sing. Dude, my band just went from being a good band to potentially being a great band.
Isn't that awesome?
She's so good.
One person could change the whole dynamic of a band.
Nothing against my old singers. My old singers were great, and we got to different levels with each one of them. But then when you get Sarah, who's a pro, and like her heart just comes out and it's effortless. Like you ever see singers that just open up their mouth and it's effortless. Like they don't have to even struggle.
I wish. I wish I could sing. I love great singers. And when you're playing behind a great singer, it tends to lift everybody else in the band.
Right.
You know, and that's what you want from anybody in your band. I love working with people that lift. I want to be able to lift the people I'm playing, and I love when they lift me.
Well, you know what's funny? We have energy. See, a lot of people that aren't in bands don't realize that there's energy on the stage. Now, there's some nights where the energy's high.
Yeah.
Somewhere it's low. But there's also some nights, and you know this, man, you're in a zone, and you and your bandmates are all in the same zone.
Yeah.
It could be for a minute. It could be for a 3-minute song. But you're in a zone where everything is clicking, man, and everybody's tight, and everybody's feeding off each other, man. Yeah. And that, that saying, like that magic is there.
I love those nights.
It's almost like an adrenaline rush. And it goes away, but then it comes back maybe later, but it's not the reason why it's so special, because it doesn't last forever. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you have the perfect ending and you decide you're going to go bump, 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 bump at the end. And I happen to be going bump right with you, and wow, we didn't rehearse that. And it came out perfect.
Yep. Yeah. That's cool stuff. Dwayne will turn around to me. We're going to give me 10, or something like that.
Sure.
Playing these, like a lot of gigs, luckily we're lucky to play 3-hour gigs, but some of them are 4, and there's a couple places that might be even like 4.5-hour gigs. To be in that zone that long, that's tough.
Yeah, of course it is.
That's
tough.
But
then it's not a zone. It's never a zone. See, it's only a zone when it's a special little segment.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just did a 4.5-hour show, and what happens is you get tired, But what keeps us going, like the Gator Club's a late night.
Yeah.
But because there's a full dance floor and it's a late crowd, we had people at 2:00 in the morning screaming for one more. I mean, we had a full dance floor, and at that point, you're like, you're just exhausted, man. And you have to turn your amp off, and you have to take your guitar off, and you got to say, "I'm sorry, I can't do anymore." Like you blame it on the police. We have a curfew, 2 a.m.
Yeah.
But we sometimes have those 45-minute sets. We have the 1.5-hour sets. I mean, we play all different types of arrangements. But when I make a set list, and I was going to ask you about your opinion on this, I'm thinking about beats per minute. I'm thinking about a dance floor, and I'm saying, okay, we're going to start off slow. We're going to bring them on a roller coaster. We're going to get them up.
Yeah.
Get them dancing. Then we know at some point they're going to want to take a break. So then maybe we'll come up with like a Tennessee whiskey or something, a belly bumper.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever put set lists together, or are you ever consulted on the set lists from a drumming perspective?
No.
Do you wish you were sometimes?
Yeah, but sometimes there's circumstances with certain songs that I'd like to put together that we can't, because there might be a guitar that has to be switched out because of a different tuning,
right.
That I would think would be great in a string, but it doesn't always work out because of that, something like that. Now, when I was, and you said this, that sparked a memory. I played in this dance band in the Panhandle, Florida, for 6 years, this big club. And yeah, we would do set lists where I knew the BPM of every song. So, and 120 is a heart rate. So we would string songs together that were.
And would you mash them and medley them?
Some songs we would, but we would play a group of songs that were in certain tempo range, and then we would dip the tempo down. Maybe that would be opportunity for people to go to the bar and get a
Exactly.
drink. And then,
dude, I think about that all the time.
And then getting back on the dance floor.
I think about that all the time when I put a set list together.
I love flow, and I don't like when set lists go up, down. It just takes you out of it. Because I like to stay up for a little while, and bring it down. But when it's just kind of roller coasting, it just like
you want the dance floor to keep going. So if you have an hour set, we try to do something where we can keep them on the dance floor for the majority of that hour.
Yeah.
But now what we're doing is something interesting. I just introduced this to the band. We're taking all of our country songs and we're grouping them together. So now we'll come out here for the party, Gretchen Wilson.
Oh yeah, I like that.
And we just bang them out.
Yeah.
And it's cool because all of a sudden now the place just turned into a country bar and everybody's screaming. And then we end it with Friends in Low Places, which everybody sings to.
Yeah.
So we do that. Then we do our 70s disco, like our Donna Summer and that kind of stuff. Now we're grouping that together. So and what we could do is we can go right into each song because it'll end in a G.
Yep.
This one starts in a G, and we're working on the transitions to those songs. So the beat doesn't stop.
Yep.
It's a beautiful thing, man.
If you keep the people up and their rates are up, they're going to drink more. They're going to have fun. And you're not going to lose.
The one thing that people never talk about is they may go home at night and say, hey, that singer was great. Or, hey, that guitar player, man. They don't really say, hey, man, that bass and drummer or that drummer and bass player. They don't really talk about the rhythm section. I mean, because you made a good point earlier is that sometimes the best drummers are the ones that you don't even see them or hear them. They're just so into the song and they're so in the pocket that they're not noticed.
Some of the best players, I think, are the ones I don't notice.
Right.
Those are the ones I actually notice. But
people forget about that. Drums, that's really the definition of drums sometimes. It's not being splashy and flashy, unless, of course, the song calls for it. But it's just being so rock solid, man, that it's like.
Yeah. My job is just to lay down a solid foundation, give something people to dance for, something for my band to hang on to, and have fun.
Well, the good news, and I guess as we can wrap up here, you're in high demand because you're a great drummer and you do just that, man.
Thank you.
You know what I'm saying? You keep the pocket, right? Your fills are very tasteful, right? As I mentioned earlier in the beginning of the show, a lot of people enjoy your drumming and you're obviously a class act yourself.
I try. Thank you.
So now how can people find out about where you're going to be performing? After watching this particular segment, people may say, hey, man, that's Steve Camilleri guy. I want to go see him. How do I find out? ONR.com
or Shaky Pudding now has a Facebook page, so they can go there and look for Shaky Pudding dates, or just look for posts on Facebook.
You're on Facebook and you're active?
Yeah.
Okay. So to wrap up, the Shaky Pudding, so that's Bobby Schneck, yourself, and who's the bass player? Because he's quite good.
Brian Hayes.
Okay. I like to meet Brian.
Yeah.
Because I dig his tone. I dig his style.
He's out of Baltimore. He's been around here for a lot of years. Plays a lot on the key.
Because Shaky Pudding is a very, very local Sarasota band. I mean, you guys are up and down Siesta Key, right? You're doing a lot of the places like the Big Top, because Bobby Schneck, that guy, he's playing 7 days a week, and sometimes he's doing double sessions.
He's a monster. Yeah, that band's fun. I mean, not to get
Captain Kurtz. You guys are there a lot.
Yeah.
And One Night Rodeo doesn't play as much, but they're bigger shows. And I'm saying
bigger shows. We just worked on. Just saw a video last night. Dwayne's been putting a bunch of promotional videos together now. We've been compiling a lot of videos from gigs lately, and so the gigs are coming more. There's going to be more shows for the band because that's, before we were doing 1 here, 2 here, but now I think he wants to do more, at least 4 or 5 shows a month if we can.
And you know what? Every time One Night Rodeo is performing and I have a chance to go see, I'll come see you guys.
Oh, awesome.
I'm still friends with an old guitar player of yours, Jonathan Hartsfield.
Oh, yeah. I love John.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Great, young, talented guy. So also in closing here, you and I are going to be both playing both our bands, the county fair. So this year, Sarasota County Fair is coming back. It's obviously an annual thing. And Jacked Up is doing Thursday, March 20th. And I believe you're doing Monday, March 17th.
That's correct.
And they're basically 3 sets, right? There'll be a 4:30 set, a 6 o'clock set, and an 8 o'clock set.
Correct.
And I think it's $10 to get in. And the great thing about it, if you have kids, is that for an extra $2, I think the kids get an armband and they can go do all the Ferris wheel and all the crazy stuff, you know. But the fun thing that I like, and it's hysterical, man. I don't know why more people don't watch. They have these pig races, man.
Oh, I love the pig races.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like they're like horse races.
Yeah.
And the pigs come running through they have their own lanes, right? And sometimes a pig will just be like winning, and then all of a sudden he'll stop, and he turns around and goes the other way. You're like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah, I love the names of the pigs. Notice that they'll give pigs names like Katy Perry. They'll give her like Piggy Perry or something like that. It's like, yeah, go Piggy
Chris
Perry.
P. Bacon.
Yeah, something like that.
All right, Steve. Well, listen, man. Thanks for coming in, man.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. It was
great talking with
pleasure.
you, and I'm looking forward to hearing you guys. And certainly, if I ever need a fill-in drummer and you're available, we're definitely going to call you because you did one show with us and you were fantastic, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to do it again.
All right, great.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.